Alrighty, folks, we fell to 13-2 in my last 15 Gold Club tier package plays yesterday. Good for just 87% during that span of plays. Gave out a horrible play. Didn't even come close. Well, we missed by a few points, a couple of baskets, but regardless, it was a horrible play. We're also 7-2 in my last 9 NBA tier package picks, 8-2 in my last 10 underdog tier package plays. I've got plays going off in all of those packages on Sunday. Those plays are already posted on the premium page, so hopefully we can right the ship and get the job done. Once again, fell to 13-2 in my last 15 Gold Club tier package plays. Good for just 87%. It's Sunday, February 23rd, 2025. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Army Bucknell, 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Bucknell is -6, totals 143.5. Now Bucknell is 14-14 on the year, 10-3 straight up at home. Meanwhile, Army is just 4-8 on the road this year, losers of 4 out of their last 5 meetings with Bucknell. Actually, didn't even see it. There it is. Now the Black Knights have struggled on the defensive end of the court. They're 302nd in defensive boards, 308th in field goals allowed. And they're facing a red-hot Bucknell team who got the W in 6 out of their last 7. They covered in all of those contests except for one. Noah Williamson scores 17 points a game. Josh Basco, 15 points per contest himself. Now the Bison saw overs in 8 out of their last 10. Army games went 60% to the over in their last 10 themselves. Give me Bucknell -6 over 143.5. All right, next game should be a good one. UConn-St. John's, 12 o'clock East. St. John's is -4.5, totals 138.5. Now, the Red Storm saw unders in 7 out of their last 10. They're 9th in the country in blocks. Meanwhile, UConn on the other side, they're 1st in the country in blocks on defense. Unders in 6 out of their last 10. Can't give you a freebie on that one. I like the under 138.5. All right, next matchup, Colgate, Loyola, Maryland, 12 o'clock East. Colgate's -4, totals 144. Now the Raiders beat Loyola in their last 9 straight head-to-head meetings. It's been all Raiders. Loyola's just 10-6 overall, 5-6 straight up at home. The Greyhounds have definitely had their issues on defense this year. They're 305th in defensive field goal percentage. They're facing a Colgate squad who got the W in 3 out of their last 4. 85 points a game they averaged during that span. Nick Louis-Jacques averages double-digit points a game. Jalen Cox with 11.5 points a night himself. Now, as a team, the Raiders are averaging nearly double-digit 3 balls a game. Now, Colgate matchups went 9-1 to the over in their last 10. Loyola saw overs recently versus Boston U, Bucknell, and this very Colgate team. That was actually a 14-point loss to the Raiders back on the 8th. That was only a few weeks ago. I like Colgate -4 over 144. All right, next matchup, North Texas taking on South Florida, 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. North Texas is -5.5 away from home, totals 129.5. Now, the Mean Green's 19-6 on the year, but they failed to cover in 5 out of their last 8. USF, 9-4 straight up at home, doing a nice job getting steals on defense. They're taking on a North Texas squad who really isn't overly explosive on offense. The Mean Green's averaging only 68 points a game this year. They rank 341st in field goals per contest. Now, North Texas failed to cover recently versus Rice, UAB, and Texas San Antonio. The Mean Green saw unders in 4 out of their last 6. USF games went 7-3 to the under in their last 10. I like South Florida +5.5, under 129.5. All right, next ball game, IU-Indy taking on Northern Kentucky, 1 o'clock Eastern tip. NKU's -8.5, totals 145.5. Now the Norse are 9-6 at home. IU-Indy's just 4-10 on the road. The Jags are also 9-19 overall for the season. They also took the loss in 7 out of their last 10. The Jaguars are currently 305th in offensive field goal percentage. They're squaring off against a Northern Kentucky squad who covered in 4 out of their last 6. Covers against Wright State, Cleveland State, and Oakland. And once again, the Norse got the W in 9 of 15 on their own floor this year. Josh Dilling is 40% from three-land. Trey Robinson, 15 points a game. The North saw unders recently versus Green Bay and Detroit. Give me NKU minus 8.5, under 145 and a hook. All right, next contest, Merrimack taking on Iona. That's going to be a 1 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Merrimack's minus 1.5, totals 131 and a hook. Merrimack's 14-13 on the year. Iona's just 12-15. The Gales are also playing just .500 basketball at home. One of the worst shooting teams in college basketball. Iona's currently in the bottom 25 in shooting from the field, just 31% from beyond the arc. Unfortunately for them, Merrimack's in the top 20 in the nation in defensive scoring. The Warriors limit their competition to just 64 points a game. They also rank 30th in steals, 23rd in 3 balls allowed. Now, their games went 8-2 to the under in their last 10. I like Merrimack minus 1.5, under 131 and a hook. Next game, Big Ten action, Purdue, Indiana, 1:30 p.m. East. Purdue's minus 3.5, totals 151. Now, the Boilermakers saw overs in 6 out of their last 9, top 10 in shooting from the field. Fletcher Lawyer shoots 45% from three-land. Kaufman-Wren averages over 19.5 points a game. Meanwhile, Indy saw overs in 5 out of their last 9 themselves. 76 points per game they're averaging on offense. Omar Ballo leads the Hoosiers in points per game. Mackenzie Mabako averages 13 points a night. Now, the over cashed in 4 out of these teams' last 5 head-to-head gatherings. So if you're into historical trends, plenty of overs to go around. I like the over 151. All right, next matchup, FAU taking on Memphis. And that'll be a 2 o'clock Eastern tip-off. A lot of 2 o'clock games tomorrow. Memphis is minus 9.5, totals 159 and a hook. Now, the Tigers are 21-5 on the year, 10-2 straight up at home. FAU's covering in just 40% of their games this year, just .500 basketball on the road. Of course, more recently, the Owls failed to cover in 7 out of their last 10. They rank 302nd in points allowed. Now, Memphis on the other side, they're averaging nearly 80 points a game themselves, 3rd in shooting the 3-ball. The Tigers are knocking down 40% of their 3-pointers as a team. PJ Haggerty makes 42% of his long balls, 21 points per contest for Haggerty. And Tyrese Hunter scores just about 15 points a game himself, 41% from beyond the arc. Now, oddly enough, Memphis did see unders recently versus South Florida, Tulane, and Charlotte. Meanwhile, 5 out of FAU's last 9 fell under the line, throwing out that Temple game. I like Memphis minus 9.5, under 159 and a hook. All right, next matchup, Kansas City taking on South Dakota State. That'll be a 2 o'clock Eastern tip-off. South Dakota State's minus 9.5, totals 143 and a hook. Now, the Jackrabbits are 18-10 on the year, 12-1 straight up at home. KC just 11-17 themselves, 2-10 straight up on the road. And I'll tell you, more recently, the Roos lost 9 out of their last 10. They struggled on offense in most of those games. And they're facing a South Dakota State team who got the W in 7 out of their last 9. They rank 30th in defensive boards. Now, the Jackrabbits saw unders in 6 out of those 9 contests I just mentioned. KC games went 5-4 to the under in their last 9 themselves. I like South Dakota State minus 9.5, under 143 and a hook. All right, next ball game, Canisius taking on Siena, 2 o'clock East. Siena is the 13-point favorite at home, totals 141. Now, the Saints covered in 67% of their games this year, 8-4 straight up at home. Canisius just 2-24 overall, 1-13 on the road. The Golden Griffins are averaging just 64 points a game. They're dead last in the nation in offensive rebounding. Now, on the defensive end, not much better there. The Griffins are allowing nearly 80 points a game, bottom 3 in the country in defensive field goal percentage. They're taking on a Siena program who covered in 8 out of their last 10. Covers against the likes of Niagara, St. Pete's, and Quinnipiac. Brendan Coyle drills 40% of his long balls. Justice Eat My Shotes is averaging 16 points a game. Now, Siena Contest went 8-1 to the over in their last 9. Canisius saw overs in 5 out of their last 9 themselves, throwing out that Mount St. Mary's contest. I like Siena minus 13, over 141. All right, next game, QU taking on Manhattan, 2 o'clock East. Quinnipiac's minus 3.5, totals 155 and a hook. Now, the Bobcats are 16-10 on the year, but they cover in only 40% of their games. Now, Quinnipiac also has a losing record on the road. Manhattan on the other side, 13-11 overall, 7-4 straight up at home. Jaspers are also covering in 61% of their games this year, 7-3 against the spread in their last 10. They're facing a Quinnipiac school who's been little threat shooting the long ball. The Bobcats make just 29% of their 3 balls. They also have a tough time getting shots off. Quinnipiac's in the bottom 15 in blocked shots per game. Now, total-wise, Manhattan saw unders in 6 out of their last 10. I like the under, 155.5. Next contest, Temple, UAB, 2 o'clock East. Alabama, Birmingham's minus 8.5, totals 163 and a hook. UAB 17-9 on the year, 12-3 straight up at home. Temple 14-13 themselves, 2-8 on the road. The Owls are currently on a 5-game skid, and they allowed over 86 points a game during that span. Now, Temple's definitely had their issues with foul trouble on defense, and they do rank 321st in field goals allowed. And that's certainly good news for UAB because this team's 4th in the nation in field goals per game, 13th in scoring. Yaxel Lendenborg averages 18 points a game, 11 rebounds a night. And Alejandro Vasquez, he's scoring double-digit points a game as well. Now, the Blazers saw overs in 6 out of their last 9. Temple, on the other side, they have not seen an under in over a month. The Owls are actually 81% to the over for the entire year. Give me UAB minus 8.5, over 163 and a hook. All right, next contest. Niagara taking on Marist. That'll be a 2 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Marist is minus 7.5 at home. Totals 129. Pretty good number there for Marist, believe it or not. Marist is 19-5 on the year, 10-2 straight up at home. Niagara 10-16 themselves, 2-11 on the road. The Purple Eagles are averaging only 68 points a game, bottom 15 in offensive boards. Meanwhile, Marist is a top 40 defensive rebounding team, 21st in points allowed. The Red Foxes are giving up only 64 points a game. When it comes to the total, oddly enough, both schools saw overs in 5 out of their last 8, respectively. I like Marist minus 7.5, over 129. All right, next contest, Tulane taking on Wichita State. That'll be a 2 o'clock Eastern tip. Wichita's minus 4.5, totals 142 and a hook. Now, Wichita State's 16-10 on the year, but they're covering in only 40% of their games. Meanwhile, Tulane's 15-11 themselves, winners of 7 out of their last 10. The Green Waves 26 in blocks, 22nd in defensive field goal percentage. Tulane's currently limiting their opponents to just 39% shooting from the field. Now, they're facing a Wichita team who lost 5 out of their last 9 themselves. They've been like no threat shooting the 3 ball. These guys are in the bottom 10 in 3-pointers made per game. Now, total-wise, Wichita State games went 8-2 to the under in their last 10. I like Tulane plus 4.5, under 142 and a hook. All right, next game, little Big East action here. Xavier, Seton Hall, 2 o'clock Eastern tip. Xavier's -9. Total is 137.5. Xavier 17-10 overall, winning record against the point spread. Seton Hall is just 7-19 themselves, 36% against the number. The Pirates have also lost 8 of 13 as the home team, and they've been terrible offensively. Seton Hall averaged only 57 points a game in their last 9 outings. Of course, they took the loss in all of those games except for one. Meanwhile, Xavier on the other side won 7 out of their last 10, doing a nice job shooting the basketball. The Musketeers are 15th in shooting the 3-ball, 10th in shooting from the stripe. Zach Fremantle averages over 16.5 points a game. Conwell is scoring 15 a night as well. Xavier contest went 7-1 to the over in their last 8. Seton Hall saw overs recently versus Marquette, UConn, and Butler. I like Xavier -9, over 137.5. All right, next game. Milwaukee, Robert Morris, 2 o'clock East. RMU's -2, totals 151.5. The Colonials saw overs recently versus Green Bay, Northern Kentucky, and IU Indy. They're in the top 35 in free throws made, 76 points per contest they're averaging. Alvaro Folgueras averages 14 points a game for Robert Morris, 41% from three-land. And Amarian Dickerson, he's scoring over 13.5 points per contest himself. They're facing a Milwaukee squad who saw overs in 7 out of their last 9 themselves. 79 points per contest for them. Themis Fulks averages over 14.5 points a game. JaMychal Stillwell averages 13 points per contest himself. I like the over 151.5. Next contest, Sacred Heart, St. Peter's, 2 o'clock Eastern tip. St. Pete's is -1.5, totals 140 and a hook. St. Peter's is just 9-14 on the year, 4-5 straight up at home. And more recently, the Peacocks took the loss in 7 out of their last 10. They're in the bottom 10 in shooting from the field. St. Peter's is making only 39% of their field goals. They're taking on a Sacred Heart team who got the W in 6 out of their last 8. 80 points a game they averaged during that span. Tanner Thomas drills 43% of his long balls, 14 points a game. And Niall Ralph Bayer is making 45% of his three-pointers. The Pioneers saw unders recently versus Merrimack, Fairfield, and Manhattan. I like Sacred Heart +1.5, under 140 and a hook. Next contest, Holy Cross, Navy, 2 o'clock East. Navy's 5.5 at home, totals 138. Now the Midshipmen are just 10-18 on the year, losing record against the point spread. And more recently, Navy failed to cover in 4 out of their last 6. They're having a tough time this year getting to the rack. Navy averages only 69 points a game, 326th in offensive field goal percentage. They're squaring off against a Holy Cross team who covered recently versus Lafayette, Boston U, and Army. Now, the Crusaders rarely send shooters to the foul line on defense. They're doing a nice job shooting the 3-ball on offense. Holy Cross is currently 16th in offensive three-point percentage. Joe Nugent's drilling 41% of his deep balls, double-digit points a game. And Max Green's leading the program in points per contest. Holy Cross saw overs recently versus Lafayette, Colgate, and Army. I like Holy Cross +5.5, over 138. Next game, Green Bay, Youngstown State, 2 o'clock East. YSU's -13 at home, totals 149.5. The Penguins are 18-11 on the year, winning record against the point spread. Green Bay, just a dismal 3-23 overall, 1-15 on the road. The Phoenix averages only 68 points a game, bottom 10 in offensive boards. And they're taking on a Youngstown team who's 24th in the nation in three-pointers allowed, doing a great job on defense. Now, more recently, the Pens covered in 5 out of their last 7 outright wins and 7 out of their last 10. Nico Gillette averages a dozen points a game. Jawan Maxey with double-digit points per contest himself. Green Bay went 4-2 to the under in their last 6. I like Youngstown State minus 13, under 149.5. Next game, Texas San Antonio, East Carolina, 2 o'clock East. East Carolina's minus 7.5, totals 148 and a hook. The Pirates are 15-12 on the year, 600 win percentage at home. Utz is 10-16 overall themselves, 3-10 straight up on the road. The Roadrunners also dropped their last 5 straight. They ranked 328th in shooting from the field. Meanwhile, ECU on the other side, winners of 6 out of their last 9. They covered in all of those ball games except for 3. CJ Walker scores 18 points a night, 53% from the field. And RJ Felton's averaging 18 points per contest himself. Now, total-wise, Texas San Antonio saw unders in 6 out of their last 10. I like East Carolina minus 7.5, under 148 and a hook. Next game, Ryder, Mount St. Mary's, 2 o'clock East. The Mounts minus 6, totals 138.5. Mount St. Mary's is 16-10 on the year, 60% against the point spread. Ryder just 10-17 overall, 7-10 on the road. And more recently, the Bronx dropped 6 out of their last 9. They're in the bottom 15 in points per game. Ryder's averaging only 65 points per contest for the entire year. And they're squaring off against a Mount St. Mary's team who got the W in 5 out of their last 6. They're holding their competition to just 41% from the field. And during that 6-game stretch I previously mentioned, the Mount allowed just 66 points a game defensively. Mount St. Mary's saw unders in 5 out of their last 7. Ryder saw unders recently versus Fairfield, Siena, and Quinnipiac. I like Mount St. Mary's minus 6, under 138.5. Next game, Cleveland State taking on Oakland, 3 o'clock Eastern tip. Oakland's minus 2, totals 136. Oakland saw unders recently versus PFW and Green Bay. Just 28% shooting from 3 land for Oakland. Meanwhile, Cleveland State on the other side saw unders in 7 out of their last 9. They ranked 316th in 3 balls made themselves. Not expecting an offensive clinic in this one. I like the under 136. Next game, Big Ten, Ohio State, UCLA, 345 East. UCLA is minus 6.5, totals 140 and a hook. The Bruins are 19-8 on the year, but they took the loss in 2 out of their last 3. Ohio State, 15-12 on the year, winning record against the point spread. The Buckeyes covered recently versus Washington, Maryland, and Penn State. They're averaging nearly 80 points a game on offense. Now, the Buckeyes have also been very good from 3 land. They're 21st in the nation in offensive 3-point percentage. Bruce Thornton averages 17 points a game, 44% from beyond the arc. And John Mobley averages 13 points a game himself, 40% from 3 land for him. They're facing a UCLA squad who failed to cover recently versus Minnesota, Michigan State, and Washington. They're also one of the worst offensive rebounding teams in the Big Ten. They rank 328th in the nation in offensive boards per game. Now, the Bruins saw overs recently versus Illinois, USC, and Wisconsin. Ohio State saw 3 out of their last 4 get over the total themselves. I like Ohio State plus 6.5, keeping that one close, over 140 and a hook. Next game, Drake, UNI, 4 o'clock East. Drake's minus 1, totals 126. The Bulldogs are 24-3 on the year, but they failed to cover recently versus Bradley, Indiana State, and Missouri State. Northern Iowa, 19-9 straight up themselves, 13-2 at home. The Red Hot Panthers are on a 6-game winning streak, 7th in the country in shooting from the field. UNI is making just about 50% of their attempts from the field. Trey Campbell shoots 44% from 3 land. Titan Anderson leads the school in points per game. Northern Iowa saw overs in their last 3 straight. Drake saw overs versus Illinois State, Indiana State, and Southern Illinois. I like Northern Iowa plus 1, over 126. Next game, Utah, UCF, 4 o'clock East. Central Florida's -3.5, totals 160. Now, the Knights are playing just .500 basketball this year, losing record against the point spread. Utah's 15-11 themselves, winners of 4 out of their last 7. The Utes are limiting their opponents to just 41% shooting from the field, and they're facing a UCF team who does not shoot it well from the field themselves. The Knights are currently 324th in offensive field goal percentage. Now, UCF's also on a 7-game losing streak, failed to cover in all of those contests except for one. Central Florida saw unders recently versus Colorado, Iowa State, and BYU. Meanwhile, Utah games went 8-2 to the under in their last 10. I like Utah plus 3.5, under 160. Next contest, Georgetown, Creighton, 4 o'clock East. Creighton's -12.5, totals 143 and a hook. Creighton's 18-8 overall, 12-2 straight up at home. Meanwhile, Georgetown's 16-10 on the year, but just 3-6 straight up on the road. The Hoyas are making just 6 3 balls a game, 30% from beyond the arc. Creighton's one of the tougher teams to score points against. 68 points per contest they're allowing, 40% from the field. They're also sending fewer shooters to the foul line than any other team besides one. Now, their games went 6-3 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, Georgetown saw unders recently versus Seton Hall, St. John's, and Villanova. I like Creighton -12.5, under 143 and a hook. Next game, Arizona State, Kansas State, 4 o'clock East. K-State's -6 at home, totals 144.5. Now, K-State's 9-3 straight up at home. Arizona State just 2-6 on the road. The Sun Devils are on a 6-game skid at the moment. Failed to cover in all of those games except for one. The Sun Devils allow nearly 75 points a game on defense, 303rd in defensive boards. And they're facing a Kansas State team who's playing some pretty good, basketball over the past handful of weeks. Winners of 6 out of their last 8. 80% against the number in their last 10. That's really all that matters to us, is if they're covering. And they've certainly done that. 80% in their last 10. Now, the Wildcats do not get into a ton of foul trouble, and they do rank 25th in 3 balls allowed. They've been tough against that long ball. David Nagesson averages a dozen points a game on offense. Housen's shooting 40% from 3-land. Now, the Wildcats saw overs recently versus Kansas, West Virginia, and this very Arizona State team. Of course, Arizona State on the other side saw their last 6 straight get over the total themselves. I like Kansas State -6 over 144.5. Next and final matchup for the video, USC-Rutgers, 6 o'clock East. Rutgers is -2, totals 153. Now, the Scarlet Knights are 13-14 on the year, losing record against the point spread. USC 14-12 themselves, covers recently versus Penn State, Northwestern, and Michigan State. Now, the Trojans are averaging over 76 points a game, 32nd in shooting from the field. Wesley Yates drills 42% of his long balls, 13 points a night. And Desmond Claude averages over 15.5 points per contest himself. They're taking on a Rutgers squad who lost 3 out of their last 4. 84 points a game they allowed during that stretch. And no real surprise here, folks. The Scarlet Knights are 327th in field goals allowed per game. Now, Rutgers saw overs recently versus Maryland, Northwestern, and Michigan State. USC games went 8-2 to the over in their last 10. I like USC +2 over 153. And with that, we're going to jump into some NBA. Knicks, Celtics, 1 o'clock East. Boston's -8, totals 231. The Celtics are 40-16 on the year, but they do have a losing record against the point spread. They have not been great against the number. Now, New York, on the other side, they're 37-19 themselves. 17-9 straight up on the road. These guys have been really good while traveling. Now, more recently, the Knicks got the W in 7 out of their last 10. They're 3rd in the league in shooting from the field, doing a great job getting to the cup. Jalen Brunson averages 26 points a game, 7.5 assists per night. And Karl Anthony Towns scores over 24.5 a game himself. 42% shooting from beyond the arc. Now they're facing a Boston team on the other side who they really don't take it away much on defense. Not overly opportunistic. The Celtics are actually in the bottom 5 in defensive turnovers. So certainly an alarming stat there because they're good on D, but they don't get a lot of takeaways. And I'll tell you, as hot as the Celtics have been, they did fail to cover the point spread recently versus the likes of Dallas, Philadelphia, and the Pelicans. So not doing a great job against a number versus bad teams. They might be in trouble laying a big number against a good team. Now, Boston games went 60% to the over in their last 10. New York saw overs in 8 out of their last 10 themselves. I like the Knicks plus 8 over 231. Next contest, Mavericks-Warriors, 3:30 p.m. East. Golden State's minus 8, totals 230. Now, the Warriors saw unders recently versus Houston, Dallas, and Orlando. Meanwhile, on the defensive end, the Warriors are currently 9th in field goals allowed. Now, Dallas saw unders recently in 3 out of their last 5 themselves. They're 4th in blocks, 7th in 3 balls allowed. I like the under 230. Next game, Clippers-Pacers, 5 o'clock East. Indiana's minus 3.5, totals 231 and a hook. The Pacers are 31-23 on the year, 15-8 at home. Clippers 31-24 themselves, 12-14 on the road. And when it comes to covering the number, well, the Clippers have not been great at it lately. LA failed to cover in 7 out of their last 10. Surprisingly enough, they're 25th in defensive blocks. Now the Pacers on the other side, they got the W in 7 out of their last 10, playing some pretty good basketball. They're 4th in the league in shooting from the field. Pascal Siakam averages over 20.5 points a game, 40% from beyond the arc. He can really do it all on offense. Meanwhile, Tyrese Halliburton's dropping over 17.5 points per contest himself. 8.5 assists a night for Halliburton. Total-wise, both teams saw overs in 7 out of their last 9, respectively. Plenty of overs between both of these teams. I like the Pacers minus 3.5. Over 231 and a hook. Next matchup, Heat-Bucks, 6 o'clock East. Milwaukee's minus 4.5, totals 223. Bucks are 32-24, 18-9 at home. Miami currently 2 games below 500, just 40% against the point spread this year. And more recently, more of the same. Not great against the number. Miami failed to cover in 7 out of their last 9. They're 24th in the league in points per game. This is a team who does not score a whole lot of points. They're facing a Milwaukee team who is tough to shoot the basketball against. A lot of folks focus on the offensive end, but I'll tell you, Milwaukee's 4th in the league in defensive field goal percentage, 9th in guarding the 3-ball. Now, Milwaukee saw unders in their last 3 straight, 6-2 to the under in their last 8. Meanwhile, 5 out of Miami's last 8 stayed under the total themselves. Give me the Bucks minus 4.5, under 223. Next matchup, Wizards Magic, 6 o'clock East. Orlando's minus 12, totals 217.5. Orlando's 2 games below 500, losing record against the point spread. And more recently, the Magic failed to cover in 6 out of their last 10. They're dead last in points per game. Orlando scores a league-low 104 points per contest. And as bad as Washington's been, well, they've actually been red hot against the number recently. The Wizards covered in their last 3 straight, 7-1 against the point spread in their last 8. Lots of covers for these guys. The Wizards covered recently versus Milwaukee, Indiana, and Cleveland. They also saw overs in 6 out of their last 9. Orlando saw overs recently versus San Antonio and Sacramento. I like the Wizards plus 12 over 217.5. Washington, boy, do they stink. All right, next matchup, Pistons-Hawks, 6 o'clock East. Detroit's minus 3, totals 240. Both teams saw overs in 5 out of their last 9. Handful of scorers on both teams. Give me the over 240. Next game, Suns-Raptors, 6 o'clock East. Toronto's minus 1.5, totals 228 and a hook. The Raptors are 17-39, just 400 win percentage at home. And more recently, the Raptors took the loss in 6 out of their last 7. They're 25th in points allowed per contest, really struggling on defense. Now, Toronto's currently putting more shooters to the foul line than any other team. And they're facing a Phoenix squad who still shoots it well from long range. I know this is a team who hasn't been playing great basketball as of late, but they still shoot that deep ball well. They're 5th in offensive three-point percentage, 3rd in shooting from the stripe, which is certainly bad news for the Raptors because they're putting a million guys to the foul line a night. Now, Kevin Durant averages 27 points a game, 40% shooting from beyond the arc. Meanwhile, Beal, Allen, Jones, and O'Neal, they're shooting over 40% from three-land combined. Both teams saw overs in 6 out of their last 10. I like the Suns plus 1.5, over 228.5. Next contest, Grizzlies, Cavaliers, 7 o'clock East. Cleveland's -5 at home, totals 249. The Cavs are 46-10 on the year, 26-4 straight up at home. Meanwhile, Cleveland got the W in 9 out of their last 10. And they went 70% against the number during that time frame. And as good as they've been on offense, Cleveland's currently 6th in defensive field goal percentage. They're facing a Memphis squad who failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5 themselves. Failures to cover against the likes of Orlando, Indiana, and the Clippers. The Grizzlies are currently in the bottom 10 in points allowed. They're actually putting more shooters to the stripe than any other team in the Western Conference. I know we were just talking about Toronto. They're putting more shooters to the stripe in the entire league. Well, these guys, dead last in the Western Conference. Now, the Grizzlies saw 4 out of their last 5 stay under the line. Cleveland saw unders recently versus Brooklyn, Detroit, and Boston. I like Cleveland -5, under 249. Next matchup, Spurs, Pelicans, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. San Antonio's -1, totals 240. The Spurs are just 24-30 on the year, but New Orleans is worse. The Pels are 13-43, 30 games below 500. Of course, the Pels are also just 9-19 in the Smoothie King Center. And more recently, they have not played well. The Pelicans lost 9 out of their last 10, and they look pretty dismal on defense during that stretch. The Pels currently have the 2nd highest defensive field goal percentage in the NBA. They also saw overs in 6 out of their last 9. Spurs saw overs recently versus Washington, Orlando, and Charlotte. Give me the Spurs -1, over 240. With that, we're going to jump into our next and final breakdown for the video. Thunder, T-Wolves, 9:30 p.m. East. OKC's -7.5, totals 225.5. OKC's 45-11 on the year, 70% against the point spread. Minnesota's 5 games above 500 themselves, but just 24-33 against the point spread. And more recently, the T-Wolves failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4. They currently rank 24th in the league in field goals per game on offense. Not getting to the cup as much as they would like. Now, they're facing an OKC squad on the other side who's first in the West, first place, best record. And I'll tell you, Thunder plays very hard on defense. OKC allows fewer points a game than any other team. They currently lead the league in defensive turnovers, first in defensive field goal percentage. OKC saw unders recently versus Miami, Memphis, and this very Minnesota team. Give me the Thunder, -7.5, under 225.5. And with that, folks, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap. College basketball, Bucknell -6, over 143.5. I like the under 138.5 in that UConn-St. John's game. We're 13-2 in our last 15 Gold Club tier package plays on my premium page. Good for 87% in that stretch. Colgate -4, over 144. South Florida +5.5, under 129.5. Northern Kentucky -8.5, under 145.5. Merrimack -1.5, under 131.5. I like the over 151 in that Purdue-Indiana matchup. Memphis minus 9.5, under 159 and a hook. South Dakota State minus 9.5, under 143.5. Did Michael go to the titty bar today?
I don't even know.
Your mom told me that.
Yeah,
he was going.
She said they were gonna.
She said him and Lex, yeah. Give me the over 151 in that Purdue-Indiana matchup. Memphis minus 9.5, under 159 and a hook. South Dakota State minus 9.5, under 143.5. Siena minus 13, over 141. I like the under 155.5 in that Quinnipiac-Manhattan matchup. UAB minus 8.5, over 163 and a hook. Marist minus 7.5, over 129. Tulane plus 4.5, under 142.5. Xavier minus 9, over 137 and a hook. Give me the over 151.5 in that Milwaukee-Robert Morris matchup. Sacred Heart plus 1.5, under 140 and a hook. Holy Cross plus 5.5, over 138. Youngstown State minus 13, under 149 and a hook. East Carolina minus 7.5, under 148.5. Mount St. Mary's minus 6, under 138 and a hook. I like the under 136 in that Cleveland State-Oakland matchup. Ohio State plus 6.5, over 140.5. Northern Iowa plus 1, over 126. Utah plus 3.5, under 160. Creighton minus 12.5, under 143 and a hook. Kansas State minus 6, over 144.5. And give me USC plus 2, over 153. NBA, Knicks plus 8, over 231. I like the under 230 in that Dallas-Golden State matchup. Pacers minus 3.5, over 231 and a hook. Milwaukee minus 4.5, under 223. Wizards plus 12, over 217.5. Give me the over 240 in that Detroit-Atlanta matchup. Suns plus 1.5, over 228 and a hook. Cleveland minus 5, under 249. San Antonio minus 1, over 240. And give me OKC minus 7.5, under 225 and a hook. And with that, folks, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my premium page. And if you do end up getting a membership here today on my premium site, just a friendly reminder, you're going to get access to that membership every single day for the next 30 days. And as an added bonus, you're also going to get access to all of my cheaper memberships during that time frame, absolutely free. They're going to be included with your membership. That's why I always tell folks, that Gold Club package, it's a full access, all-inclusive membership. Gives you access to every single premium selection of mine, every single package, every single day for the next 30 days. But most importantly, folks, gotta thank you for joining me right here on the free video. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. With that said, folks, happy Sunday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my premium page.